KTN News. Get the whole story.
Atuchui inaitwa BBC imeanza CBC atuchui.
Sio kama ile ya kitabu mtoto anakuja anafanya homework na ni hivyo.
Labda ameambiwa waende wapige picha kitu fulani.
Hiyo pesa ya kwenda kuprint hizo homework hauna.
Parenting is not let there be a child and a child comes there. Let the child grow. Send them to school, let the teacher do their work. Parenting is hard work.
How well have we prepared teachers for this new responsibility? I am not satisfied with the level of preparation.
The teachers are doing their best. I don't want to blame the teachers at all. But the population, we have a population explosion.
I always say, if you have taken Agustin, you have chosen to take your child to that school that is asking for 30 books. It is a choice.
Cleaning of markets and other open spaces using improvised equipment and children performing other social assignments are some of the early pictures that announced the arrival of the competency-based curriculum. It came with the promise of creativity and freedom for learners to explore by using the local available resources to meet the expectations in various learning areas and activities.
Our focus in 844 was exams, and if your talent was not in that, and then there was no opportunity for you to develop and advance yourself. So CBC came to say children are talented differently. There are those who do well in sports, there are those who do well in arts, there are those who do well in technical fields. And so it came to provide those alternatives so that every child finds something in school that will enable them to advance and to be able to excel and achieve their full potential.
Hatuwezi sema ni mbaya, inasaidia watoto wetu sana. Na inawasaidia sana kwanza wakati wanakuwa wakijua ni nini ambayo watafanya kwa future. Wanagrow wakiwa na talent.
Comparing with the 844 system, if at all there were enough training for the teachers, I can embrace it since it is all child-oriented.
For the teacher who is in a class of today is a question of being creative. What is the skill from the curriculum that needs to be developed? Which are the ways I can use to teach a similar skill without requiring that IT equipment? It is a question of creativity. It is for the teacher to ask. First of all, you think of what needs to be done and what is the best way within my means that I can do that. And I remember that cleaning of the market, it brought those issues. And we were saying they needn't all of them have gone to a market. That skill and the value of cleanliness can be taught without everybody going to the market.
Nearly 4 years after its rollout, many gaps still exist, threatening to derail the train, which came loaded with the promise of access, relevance, transition, equity and quality in our education system. Despite assurances by the government that everything is fully under control and on course, the reality on the ground suggests otherwise. This is Parker Hills Primary School in Tiaty constituency, Baringo County. Despite being CBC compliant of up to grade 5, there is a problem. The school only has 2 teachers, one recognized by the TSC and the other one not recognized.
Nafunza top class. After top class, mimi nafukusa nje, alafu mimi naenda grade 1. Mimi nafunza sasa grade 1 mpaka time ya nyumbani ifike, alafu naenda nyumbani.
But the most tragic revelation is that none of the teachers has been trained on CBC, yet they are supposed to teach on the same. In fact, the entire community here knows completely nothing about the CBC.
Na tena atuchui inaitwa BBC imeanza CBC atuchui kwa kwetu. Atuchui hiyo. Sasa tunajua ile ya zamani. Ile 844. Kwa sababu hiyo maneno imeanziwa huko town na sisi ni hapa ni msituni.
Nanzi hapa. Kitosha. Ndio.
This is Hilda and her child who is in grade 5. Every evening, she must set aside every other engagement to focus on her child's homework. And together, they go through all the schoolwork. It is the new norm in her daily routine, which requires that she be at home early enough than before. Yet, the biggest challenge is the added financial burden that came with the CBC.
Nilitishwa vitabu karibu 20 exercise books peke yake. Textbook zira karibia 12. Ambapo naona hapo CBC yenyewe hapo hakuna Kenya wamefanya juu ni kuumiza wazazi tena ni kunyanyasa wazazi.
Can you just read this one?
Her situation is not any different from Eunice Ogola, who has been feeling the burden of managing 2 children in a CBC class. Her children's homework is paramount and must be accorded all the attention.
Cost ya living imekuwa juu na cost ya CBC pia imekuwa juu. Juu unaweza pata mwalimu anapatia mtoto homework aenda print for example furnitures akala. Na kama wewe kama mzazi umetoka kutafuta umechoka, then hiyo pesa ya kwenda kuprint hizo homework hauna. Inakuanga challenge kwa sababu haitakuwa amefanya homework zake zote juu kwenda kwa cyber kuprint ni costly.
On her part, Mary Wanjeri says CBC is both demanding and expensive.
Maybe umetoka hauko, kuna watoto wengine wadogo unashughulikia. So inakuwa ni kazi ngumu, inakulazimu ujaribu tu kabisa kutafuta wakati wa huyo mtoto. Kama hauko, unaweza kuwa na usaidizi kutoka ndugu zake ule mkubwa akusaidie. Kama hauko, juu lazima huyo mtoto akue na wewe. Masomo yao sio ya kuachilia mtoto.
The Basic Education Curriculum Framework emphasizes the importance of parental empowerment and engagement, value-based education and community service learning. Under the CBC, the Minister of Education is supposed to review the existing policies to accommodate the 3 aspects of parental participation in the learning of their children.
One of the chapters we addressed parental empowerment and engagement. Today's parents, your age mate, they do not know how to engage with parenting. And we are saying it's not their fault, possibly it's us, their parents, who did everything for them. So we are saying KICD, make sure that you have a program that guides the teacher on how to engage the parent, empower the parent.
Although well-intended, observers have faulted its implementation, claiming it was a false start. So bad is the situation that frustrated parents have had to go to social media to vent their frustration. Indeed, CBC implementation is the biggest challenge to parents.
You find that there are parents who normally come from work very late. Now the work is not well delivered, and that is actually one challenge we have. Another thing, the children, they can't do it alone, so they need to be guided, and by so doing, they need guidance of which the parents are not there.
Competency-based assessment is critical for the success of CBC implementation. Proper assessment administered by classroom teachers must have a balance between formative and summative assessments to inform both the feedback on learning progress and transition. For grades 1 to 3, teachers are supposed to conduct classroom assessment, with NEC required to develop a standardized assessment tool to be administered, scored and feedback given to individual learners by teachers in their respective schools. The report generated by the Kenya National Examination Council is supposed to guide teachers and advise the Teacher Service Commission to develop content for continuous teacher professional development that targets areas requiring intervention.
CBC is well conceived, is well designed. There are many challenges with the implementation, which we need to rectify, engage around them now and rectify. Otherwise, they may pose a challenge in terms of realizing the aspirations of the new curriculum.
For CBC to be well, curriculum to be well delivered, would require maybe one teacher to handle at least or at most 30 learners. Now, you go to a certain public school and you find that one teacher is handling 130 children. Isn't that just a general meeting actually? The children will not be able to achieve. if now the learners in the public schools are actually not well catered for because of the number. The teachers are doing their best. I don't want to blame the teachers at all. But the population, we have a population explosion.
Teachers and parents are among key drivers of the CBC, with the government being the chief facilitator of its implementation. However, teachers have not been adequately trained, while parents continue to struggle to understand their role.
Anapopewa kazi kwa shule, unapata akienda pale kwa nyumba, unapata anauliza mami, nisaidie hii. Labda ameambiwa waende wapige picha kitu fulani. Unapata huna hiyo material kwa nyumba. Sasa unapata hapo ni changamoto kubwa sana.
Kuna vile wanahesabu hata waoshe vyombo, inabidi umuonyeshe step to step vile anafaa kuosha hiyo vyombo, kama ni manguo zake vile anafaa kufua, vile anafaa kupanga, na kazi yake pia vile ataipanga. Iko na jukumu kubwa sana kwa mzazi masomo ya CBC. Sio kama ile ya kitabu mtoto anakuja anafanya homework na ni hivyo. Hii unafuatilia sana na pia mtoto anakuhitaji sana.
Because it's hard work to parent. Parenting is not let there be a child and a child comes there. Let the child grow. Send them to school, let the teacher do their work. Parenting is hard work. It's an engagement with your child.
We need to come up with a policy, policy adjustment on how we can work on whatever is existing to come up with a more friendlier CBC curriculum than the way it is now.
It is a resource-intensive venture on both parents and the government. While parents have been left to count extra costs, the government remains guarded on the full or estimated costs of implementation. Although well-intended, observers have faulted its implementation, claiming it was a false start. Assignments that demand children to download and print pictures and images from the internet, and schools requiring parents to buy many textbooks are some of the challenges.
Matumizi yake iko juu sana, juu ni vitu mingi inatakikana ununue kwa nyumba na pia kwa shule. Mtoto atakuja kwa nyumba akwambie wanahitajika kitu fulani, maybe hata kununua kitu wakuja wafanyie hapa.
The fact that we haven't actually fully apportioned the cost and said CBC will cost this much, but this much of the cost will be borne by parents, so that parents are aware and they can be able to prepare to shoulder that cost. And on that basis also, we are able to now say we have parents who cannot manage. So what are the alternatives to support parents who cannot manage this cost, to make sure that there is no divide, that every child benefits from the same support?
Take an example of a grade 5 child carrying home 15 textbooks. There before we used to carry 5. That is maths, English, Kiswahili, science and social studies, and CRI 5. Now they have gone 3 times. And this is the time we are crying there's no money. So where are the parents going to get this money, surely?
And I get a feeling that those schools collude with the booksellers and whatever. That's my feeling, because I know what is recommended. And in all the public schools I went in different counties, I never found an issue of these books, because they are given free of charge by the government of Kenya through Ministry of Education. So the issue of expense, I always say, if you have taken Augustine, you have chosen to take your child to that school that is asking for 30 books, it is a choice. And we all know that choices have consequences.
Competency-based assessment is critical for the success of CBC implementation. Proper assessment administered by classroom teachers must have a balance between formative and summative assessments to inform both the feedback on learning progress and a transition. However, the national assessment on CBC learners conducted a few months ago did not have a clear feedback mechanism for teachers.
Previously, what teachers did was to prepare children for examination, and Kenya National Examination Council would examine children and place them in the next level. Now teachers have the responsibility to do the continuous assessment and provide grades, which are actually going to be contribute into the final grade of the learner. How well have we prepared teachers for this new responsibility? I am not satisfied with the level of preparation. And the second issue around that is the issue of harmonizing this transition, because we still have Teacher Service Commission rating teachers' performance on the basis of how their learners perform. When you tell me that you're going to rate me on how my learners perform, and you give me the responsibility to assess and award marks to those same children, you have put me in a very serious situation of conflict of interest.
The essence of assessment is to continually monitor the performance of a learner in the various areas that they are exposed to through the curriculum, and identifying where they are performing, so that eventually as they transition to the higher levels, they are guided with the help of their parents and themselves and the teacher towards a line that which they can manage. So that continuous assessment will be used all the way up to grade 6, and they'll have accumulated like a total of 60% with evidence of what they've been doing, which will be uploaded by the NEC, and it will be there for consultation, and then do the final assessment at grade 6, which will give them 40%.
The CBC Task Force report recommends for adequate training of teachers on the CBC approach. Cries and confusion by parents could be due to wrong interpretation of the curriculum design. But Principal Secretary in charge of CBC implementation, Professor Fatuma Chege, has a different view.
I always hear teachers are not being trained, they need to go to college. And I like giving the example of driving school. I was trained to drive in this country way back in the 80s, in this city. And the vehicle I used, I don't know even whether it's on the road anymore. In between, I have driven so many other vehicles, and if you put a lorry out there, I will still ignite and that lorry will move. I don't have to go back to the driving school. So what TSC is doing is reorientating the teachers within what the competency-based curriculum requires in terms of pedagogy, in order to capture their attention towards development of the knowledge how, the competencies. How do you translate the knowledge what into knowledge how?
It has not been well got by the teachers. Though the teachers have the methodology, but still you realize that CBC and 844 are very different. So the teachers have to be well prepared. Here we are having so many documents. In fact, some teachers call it a documented curriculum, where the teacher will have to fill a lot of things. Progress reports, portfolio, there are very many. And if a teacher was to do that, and yet there the teacher is having around 120 learners, then is it the document that the teacher is going to fill, or is it that the teacher is going to take care of the children? So that's another big challenge that is there.
We started by training teachers who are teaching grades 1 to 3. In many of our schools, the teachers who are teaching those grades were the elderly teachers. So it's also possible that very many of the people we trained have exited the service. So we need to keep training regularly and keep upgrading the capacities of teachers to implement CBC.
The anticipated double transition in 2023, when the last cohort of the 844 system will transit to Form 1 and the first cohort of CBC will join junior secondary school in grade 7, could pose the greatest challenge. During that period, there will be a 27% increase in secondary school learner population from 4,381,701 to 6,029,168. And with recommendations that junior secondary schools be domiciled in all the 10,359 secondary schools across the country, there is need to expand secondary schools. According to the implementation framework, the government should by now have audited the existing school infrastructure, construct additional classrooms to cater for the expected double intake in 2023, and develop infrastructure norms and standards for basic education and technical training institutions.
Now, for double intake to happen in January 2023, a school like Alliance that has currently 9 streams of Form 1 will require 9 additional classes in January 2023 to take in a double intake. we need to be working on that right now before we cause a crisis that will then make the transition undermine the very good goals of CBC. That is important. We also need to be looking at the number of teachers that we are going to have to make available. Because if you give Alliance additional 9 streams of children, definitely you must alter the number of teachers significantly. And the 9 will only be in 2023, and in 2024 we need another 9 if they are going to take in another double intake.
And even as we speak, I know requirements are being made about classrooms. However, on the ground, you will find a school which is described as double stream. It has classrooms for double streams, but the population of the children is way like 100. And this is a school that will say, okay, now we will need extra classrooms for the junior secondary. So what our data revealed when we were doing that audit, that it's so important, and I think we made that recommendation to rationalize the infrastructure that exists. And that is what any reasonable person, even if it was my own business I'm running, I will say rationalize what there is so that we identify exactly where there is need.
The current grade 5 learners are estimated to be 1,250,649, with class 6 learners estimated to be 1,320,395. It is therefore expected that the total number of grade 6 and standard 8 learners to join secondary school in 2023 will be 2,571,044. This translates to a huge shortfall of 1,489,144 spaces in secondary schools in 2023. The biggest challenge for the government remains the creation of additional 1.5 million spaces, which translates to about 37,000 new classrooms across the country by 2023.
The transition requires that we have 2 double intakes into secondary school in January 2023 and in January 2024. We need budgeting and fundraising to make sure that we make available resources to see the transition succeed. Why? Because I know that the government has provided some 4 billion shillings and said they are going to start building classrooms. The Ministry of Public Works says a classroom, a standard classroom, should cost 1.2 million. If we were to build with the entire 4.2 billion that is allocated in the current financial year without spending any shilling on anything else, it will actually build about 3,500 classrooms. Those classrooms are not enough to put a classroom in each secondary school.
Under the CBC, learning areas have been collapsed into 3 main pathways of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, sports and social science. And to realize this, adequate funding for infrastructure development and training of new teachers is required.
It is projected that from senior secondary, 60% of the leavers of senior secondary should be going to do STEM, science, technology and engineering. And then 25% to go and do the social sciences and humanities. And then just about 15% to go and do sports and performing arts. Universities currently are operating in the opposite manner, where most of their spaces are occupied by people who are going to do humanities and the social sciences. And then very little, just about 10% really, is left for people who are going to do STEM. And in fact, many universities don't have provisions for sports and performing arts. So that's one key reorganization that they need to make.
Transition to university education has been conceptualized based on the basic education curriculum framework that articulates the CBC approach, its guiding principles, and the various pathways and tracks. Training of a secondary school teacher takes a maximum of 4 years, yet despite their central role, universities have remained passive.
First cohort of the CBC are currently in grade 5. We expect them to go to junior secondary in 2023. We expect them to go to senior secondary in 2026, and therefore we expect them to be at the university in 2029. So there are 2 key aspects of preparation universities need to make. One, as these learners get to junior secondary, and as they get to senior secondary, they will require graduate teachers. Now, these graduate teachers are produced by universities. So universities need to urgently reorganize their programs to be CPC compliant.
I can say with a lot of pride that universities have risen to the occasion. That I think it was last month in either July or August, I was called by the Vice Chancellor of Embu University. They were having a workshop for deans of schools of education to address their preparedness for teachers in 2023. We gave them a technical person. Just some 3 weeks ago in here where we were launching something, and the chair of the Vice Chancellors, Professor Muluvi, he called me aside and told me they want my department to go and talk to the Vice Chancellor so that they start preparing.
The Ministry of Education should by now have generated a list of schools with additional classrooms, expand the capacity of schools' equipment production unit to provide science kits and other equipment for the junior and senior secondary. However, with an allocation of just 4 billion shillings towards the construction of new classroom, there are fears the journey ahead could be chaotic. Shadrack Miti, KTN News.